So now we're going to demo how to do the first layer of reduction printmaking with water-based inks. So here are the inks that you got in your little packet, and then you also, of course, got a black. I am going to try to keep this first layer really, really light, but you want to also still have it not be so light that it disappears into the paper. So I'm gonna mix a color. Remember how Teresa did her demo where you have your swatches? You would want to have figured out exactly what color you want to make at this point and kind of how much to make. And I'm going to make enough to do maybe 3 prints, and then I'm going to have to remix my color because remember this ink starts to dry out. So you start with the white and a little bit of orange. And I've already mixed this color, so I kind of know what I'm going for. So you all will have figured out exactly your ratios and made the color you want. I'm gonna add a little red into this just because we want to be really modifying these colors. These are pretty hideous colors on their own, but as Teresa demonstrated, they can make some pretty sophisticated, lovely colors when mixed. So I'm gonna be printing 6 of these, right? Because you have to have 3 prints in this colorway, 3 prints in another colorway, 6 total. But of course it's printmaking, there's a chance that you might mess up a little along the way. So I'm actually gonna print 6 in this colorway, 6 in the other way, and then I only have to turn in 3 of each. So, you know how I've spent this whole semester telling you to not be too thick with your ink because it's gonna ruin your print? Well, now you have to be really thick. So roll it out. Look at this texture. Can you see this? This is like really sloppy Joe printmaking here. And then you're gonna roll it on, and you can kind of even it out a little bit on your block. But for the water-based, because it dries so fast, if you're not rolling it on really, really thick, it tends to dry before you can really get a print out of it. So, and see how I don't have a very deep channel here between my registration and my block? And that's the channel that I'm encouraging you all to do a little bit wider. It's for this reason. See how I'm having to very carefully navigate with my roller, my brayer, and not hit my registration.
Do you have any tips that you use to avoid hitting the
Good question. Good question, Keith. Yeah, I think when you come up, see how I'm shifting directions with the brayer, kind of rolling along that edge there. I have a heightened control that way. And so I'm kind of rolling up this direction to get the ink sort of out and smooth, but then when I get here, just hitting that edge. But just like we showed you throughout the semester, it's important that you really work that surface. So even though you're conscious of the fact that there's a drying time to this, you need to work that brayer or you're gonna end up with some pretty ugly lines. And those, if it's thinner in one area, it'll actually dry faster, and so it's just gonna really show up in a way that we've sort of not had to contend with as much when navigating printing with a press and oil-based ink. And on that note, you know how we always said you could kind of go to the bathroom when you're printing or something like that, walk away and your ink won't dry? That's not the case with water-based. So now I have a fairly even coat. See how thick it is on there? That's probably pretty good. So I have my paper with my pins, right? Smooth side, it's right here. That's the side that's gonna be receiving the ink. I think the easiest thing to do is take your paper and just gently roll it up. If you're having trouble not creasing it, sometimes it's nice to get a paper towel roller, you know, a piece of that cardboard, and roll your paper around that. That can give you a little bit of structure. And then you're going to watch your shirt and stuff at this point, right? line up, push your pen all the way through your paper, line it up with your push pin holes, and keep it held off of your block because you don't want it to drop down just yet. Line this up. Again, you can kind of like push it through and look, or sometimes you can see the hole. And now it's in there, and I'm going to just drop it on down. So there we go. First thing you're going to do is sort of use your hand to press it on, get everything where you want it, and then you're going to take these pins out because you don't want these holes getting pushed on and getting too wide. Now you're going to take a wooden spoon or a metal spoon, whatever you have in your house, and some kind of buffer paper. Maybe it's a paper towel, maybe it's a phone book. It doesn't really matter. And you're going to use that as a buffer so that you don't tear your Japanese paper because it's a thin, sensitive paper. You're going to use the spoon, just evenly rub the surface. Again, we're working relatively fast because this ink does dry. Make sure you hit every part of the surface. And now I can look at this, and I can see my color coming through lightly. And now I'm going to see how I did. What I found is that often you end up needing to, I'll come this way to show you first, you need to actually print twice. And so see, it's fairly good, but see there's some like kind of saltiness that's in there where the ink didn't get fully kind of applied. It's because of the water base, it's a little tricky. So I'm actually going to, I have a spritzer. I think you can use a little spritzer and kind of put a little water on your hand or something, or use a cup and get a little bit of water. I'm just gonna drop about a quarter size amount of water into my ink because it's been drying. Mix that up. And then put this onto here. Roll that back out. That's a little too sloppy, Joe. Remember, if you go too sloppy, you can always take a little of that off and roll it back out. Again, that's good. Now we're going to work that surface one more time. This time you can be a little bit faster because you already have, and see I hit the top of my channel, so I think I need to actually carve away a little more. It's a little too tight for good printing. Put that back down, and see how I pulled it off about sort of 3/4 of the image area, but left a quarter, and that's how it stayed stuck. Now I'm going to smooth that out. Hit it with the spoon. And I'm not using the edge of the spoon, I'm really using it as a flat surface. And then I'm going to turn my block around and do the same thing. Peel it up slowly. See how I'm peeling at an angle? That helps it release. Keep this in mind. See, if it's only halfway pulled back, you're likely when you're rolling your ink on to kind of accidentally roll here. You really want to avoid doing that. So pull it back far enough where it's still stuck, but not too close that you're going to be hitting it, and not so far that it releases. I'm going to pull this off, and then I'm going to show you in comparison with some of Teresa's colors that she mixed, how we could start thinking about future colors. But see, there we go. So it's decent. It's like a pretty good print. Now I would print this 6 more times in this colorway with this pink, okay? And then I'm gonna be thinking about the second color that I'm gonna print while the block is carved like this. So I'm gonna think about what the next color is gonna be. I don't want it to be this colorway. I want it to be fairly different. So, and I love some of these colors Teresa mixed. I think I'm gonna go for kind of one of these kind of lovely warm grays. But since it's my first color, I'm gonna go quite a bit lighter than that. So what I'm gonna do is I'll print this 5 more times, clean it off, And I'm gonna show you that in a minute, how you clean it off, but I'm gonna finish printing. And then I would clean it off, mix that color, and go for the second round. So we'll catch up with you in a second. I printed the first colorway of, which is this sort of pink color. Now I'm going to show you how to clean this to be able to immediately start printing your second color. But of course, not removing any more of the block, just printing it in 2 different colors. So the other thing I want to show you is this glass slab I'm printing on. You all probably won't have access to. However, you could use the back of a cookie sheet, or you can actually go to the Dollar General or something and buy a cheap frame and just take the piece of plexiglass out of that. If it is glass, just make sure you tape your edges really well, because the last thing you want to have happen is that you cut yourself. So to show you clean up, the main thing I want to tell you, you don't want to just saturate your block. You want to just wet a rag or a paper towel or whatever and just start taking off that ink. And the reason you don't want to get it super duper wet is because it actually, you know how we talked about when you make a damp pack, it actually relaxes your paper and it stretches the paper. So when you make your block super damp, but your paper is really dry, what happens, especially with this thin Japanese paper, is it actually will warp and stretch, but only in the area of your image, of your block. And so you end up with this very sort of frustrating, moving, stretching piece of paper. I also just try to get some of this ink out of my carved lines. This one's a drying one. I'm just sort of using it to kind of buff it, get off any leftover ink, and it's also sort of drying the block at the same time. Notice my drawing is still good because I did it in Sharpie. So now we're good. So have my other color mixed. Again, I'm moving around the surface, really inking that whole surface. Got my push pins. My paper. Push it through, line it up with your hole. This is a little fiddly at first, but you'll get a hang of it. Roll it out. Oops, so that's a little off. So that means when I do my next one, the registration is going to be a little off. So I'll have to keep that in mind. And actually, here's the thing. You see how there's these marks here? That's from the spoon, rather than being really flat, kind of coming at more of a sharp angle. And that will leave, and I'll actually really demo that right now. That'll leave these kind of sharp marks. So you want to not use the point of your spoon, you want to use the flat. So, and I'm going to pull it back 3/4 of the way. I also want to be going 3/4 of the way, because then what's going to happen is I'm going to actually hit this area twice, right? Once this way, and then when I flip it and do the other one, hit it again. And that's going to allow me to really have this sort of, there's not going to be a hard line in the middle because I've gone over the middle from both directions. Slide this down to the edge of the table, get my hand underneath the block, and I'm flipping it around. Now I'm going to do it again, right? Pull it back 2/3 of the way. So this middle is getting really nice, but this is still salty because this is where I haven't gotten to yet. Try not to crease my paper as I do it, kind of give it a little bit of a roll. But even though I've gone over this, I'm going to go over it again because it's not going to show a line of too much ink. It's more likely to show a line if it doesn't have enough ink. So here we go. That is that first one. And you can see, so this is the same carving, right? I've carved away just a little bit, and so you can see that as the white and these feathers and some details in the branch. And then I've printed it twice, once in this sort of greenish gray, and once in this warm orange. So I would do 6 of this and 6 of that, and then I would go on to the next step.